Good evening, good afternoon to all of you, and thanks for your kind introduction. It feels really nice to be in-person event after a long, long time, and my gratitude for all of you to take time and attend this talk. So, in line with the central theme of this conference, I'm going to touch upon a dimension around AI, which has to do with how do you look at AI at scale to be able to drive the business outcome for your organizations. So, as part of this discussion, what I will do, or as part of this talk, what I'll do is I'll just set up the context in terms of how AI has evolved, in terms of how we see AI getting involved in the last few years, and then come to the central theme around what is the construct of building AI at scale for an organization. And more importantly, look at how organizations can change and adopt this AI at scale to get the accelerated business outcomes that you're looking at. And finally, I'll touch upon some case studies and AI-first approach that we have. So I think AI, artificial intelligence, has been the talk both at the boardroom as well as different functions across the organizations. And there is a reason why that that charter and that kind of enthusiasm is there around AI. A couple of things that comes to mind. One is every organization, in some sense, have played around with AI. It may be in a siloed function, and the outcome they have got through AI is something that have kept them excited, and they could actually sort of visualize how much impact it's going to have on business as we go along. The second important aspect, according to me, is the rapid pace at which this technology has basically gained momentum. Not so long ago, I think 3 years back, we were talking about citizen data scientists. We were worried about the data science capability. We were talking about machine learning and deep learning. Fast forward that to today, and what we talk about the different techniques or around AI, something like a vision analytics, which helps us to look at images and video and sort of do deep learning around that. There is a talk about natural language processing and generation, where we are looking at unstructured data in terms of text and use that for getting business outcomes. And obviously, there are other techniques, around rule engine-based approach, rule-based approach that we take for AI, and also graph analytics, which helps you to do entity relationship mapping and understand the customer behavior, understand the entity behavior much better than what we were doing in the past. What it does effectively is, as a business stakeholder, it allows you to have plethora of choices, technologies which are far more mature than what they were, or you can use an ensemble of that depending on the business use case and the challenge that you are looking to solve. In terms of AI, and I think we have developed very quickly, all AI implementation a few years back started with a narrow AI, where you're looking at some operational efficiency. Fast forward, we had the cloud providers, integrating that with cloud and giving you a set of tools and technologies to accelerate your outcomes on AI. And today, we are also talking about the entire life cycle of AI applications. What it means is right from concept to implementation to deployment to managing and monitoring. Beyond that, it's a full life cycle that you are looking at. And more importantly, we have had roadblocks like COVID, but it has only proven that organizations which have invested in AI-first approach or AI technology, they have been more resilient to the impact that this pandemic has caused to others. And more importantly, the use case of AI have moved beyond the bottom line use cases around operational efficiency to more customer centricity, to more looking at business innovations and those kind of needs that organizations are looking at. Now, this is a typical view of how an organization across different functions will be structured. And every organization will have their own way of looking at their functional structure. And what I have done here is, looked at the entire life cycle, right from inbound to the customer engagement and everything in between. Each of these functions in their own will have use cases around AI to look at customer centricity, to look at operational efficiency, to look at risk, supply chain management, and the likes of that. The problem with this approach is that you have lack of integrated view. Each function works as a company, and they try to build their use cases around that. And when these applications around AI take life, you have problem in terms of scaling and managing that. The most important point here is basically, if you look at any inbound analytics, or for any inbound function, if you look at supplier risk analytics, and you are dependent on whether you are dependent on the geopolitical situation which may impact your production. It is okay for those functions to get to know, how those is negatively impacting their production. But if the same set of information is passed to the marketing team, they could use the same set of information to ensure that their investment on the marketing, given these circumstances, are better utilized, compared to what they would have done traditionally. Similarly, the sales people can look at how to get better ROI or outcome in terms of the geography to focus, as well as the pricing to look at from this perspective. So if you look at, in summary, the ability to sort of pass the right context to the right stakeholder at the right point of, at the right time, I think it's important, and this concept is beautifully sort of elaborated by a concept called digital thread, which is very, very predominant in the manufacturing domain, but it applies, across all different functions, that you will be dealing with. Now, if you have to look at a deep dive, how do you look at AI at scale, At the top, you'll have use cases. We have looked at use cases from a function perspective. If you look at a business, you will have focus around your customer. You'll have focus around your operations. And as the previous panel discussed about IoT and analytics, you may have some focus on the IoT analytics. That may depend on the kind of industry you are. If you are in energy and industrial segment, that will be relevant to you. Or there could be other focus areas that you may have. From a customer perspective, you can look at understanding your customer better, the next best action, customer performance, churn, survival, and likes of that. From the operational perspective, you look at analytics around all your functions, the demand forecasting, and stuff like that. And IoT, I think, predictive maintenance and product quality are some of the use cases that you always talk about. Now, you could go ahead and sort of invest in building these applications or initiatives in silos, but you'll have the same set of challenges that we described earlier. So there comes the AI foundation, and what the AI foundation does is it's a fabric, which enables, building AI at scale across organizations. And if you have to decipher that further, it basically has three main components. The first one is around the feature engineering. And what it does effectively is it gives you an ability to build a data platform where both the quality and the depth of data is important. And more importantly, it enables you to do feature store and feature catalog. What I mean by feature store and feature catalog is if you look at the healthcare industry, okay, and if you are actually looking at getting the data coming from different data sources when you are doing the patient onboarding, or you're looking at some of the parameters coming from the patient into the system. Now, getting and using that data is one part of the story, but the ability to abstract that as features. Some of the simple features could be you looking at the BMI as a feature to be able to segment customer or segment patients and understand them better so that you can give better services to them. You could also look at some of the lifestyle-related risk, where you could say high cholesterol, low risk, high risk, and medium risk, and those kind of stuff. So feature engineering becomes a very, very important aspect. And if you look at, if I actually extend this, feature engineering in terms of healthcare, if you actually want to look at a complex example, there is something called a social determinants of health. And what it does effectively is it looks at your lineage, it looks at your social engagement, it looks at your engagements at personal level, your other parameters, demographic details, the amount of pollution and the lifestyle that you lead. And you're able to actually come out with a score, and that score will help you to sort of arrive at a social determinant of health. And you could use that to sort of segment and understand both the operations and the customers better. Now, if you're doing an org-wide initiative, any feature engineering that is done by any of your group will actually be available across the organization, and that obviously gives you a lot of benefit. AI is getting adopted. The reason AI is getting adopted because it's getting used across functions. And also what's happening is you're getting humongous amount of data coming in real time, near real time, semi-real time, as well as batch. And while that is coming in, the business is also demanding that their decisions, their inferences, the changes that are happening are also real time. Now, this would need that you invest in the infrastructure, which is multi-GPU, which basically has distributed computing. And it allows you to sort of, do the right kind of training that is required for the agility that you need around AI. The third important aspect is around the deployment. I think it's a very, very important aspect. And there's a lot of technologies around Kubernetes and Docker which allows that, but it also allows you to sort of scale and spin as per your requirement. The most important aspect here is around monitoring, because COVID has taught us the customer behavior pre-COVID and post-COVID has been different for the incidents that happen or the kind of fear that set into people. Now, what does monitoring mean? The monitoring means that when you have trained the AI models based on a certain set of data. If a new set of data comes in or the behavior changes, you have the ability to monitor that. You have the ability to sort of understand the change, and either through a human loop or basically through a retraining, you get back to understand this data and get your AI foundation to work again. Continuous AI is another need of the hour, because gone are the days where you look at data coming few weeks down and try to give the outcome based on that. As changes are happening, you want to make sure that the 360-degree cycle is revitalized at the appropriate moment. Trustable AI is a very, very important thing. I think there have been a lot of discussions around that. And if an AI platform has to be adopted at scale, this, according to me, is the most important parameter. And there are different constructs to that. One, obviously, is the data that is fed into the system, the governance that is there around the data fed into system. And the other important aspects are well covered by knowing what is the purpose of the application that you are building in. And that becomes a very, very important aspect. And there are a lot of governance, whether you look at GDPR or whether you look at the European rules and regulations, they give you a good framework to be able to sort of put best practices around that. The other aspect around trust is around privacy. Okay, so the ability to look at what is the content that got to be handled with sensitivity, complying to the PII requirements and stuff like that is the second aspect of it. And the third aspect is around the biases that we spoke about. I think there was a session in the morning session which elaborately discussed about the biases. Now, biases obviously may come from the data set that comes in. Biases may come with people who are actually involved with building and managing this, this AI application. In my opinion, it's basically the responsibility of the human to sort of work in harmony with the machine to remove the system biases, and vice versa, basically use the machine to remove the human biases. And as part of our diktat to our partners and customers, we very strongly propagate a mechanism where you have a diverse team, not only just across gender, but across different demographics, across different functions. And that becomes a foundational stone for you to basically build a trustable AI. Now, we know how to build and what are the constructs of a trust, AI at scale. Now, the most challenging part within that is to actually change the organization. And as we all know, that most of the changes are very, very difficult. So this is one of the approaches that we have seen working with our experiences, where you start with basically having an executive mandate. If you don't have an executive mandate, you'll still keep working in silos. The decisions will be done in silos, and that will not get you the ROI that you're looking from the investment that you're doing. Exec mandate followed by putting up the business goals, and that basically leads you to put a top-down ownership across different functions to make that, to execute it. And what it means is you're starting top-down, you have the investment, you have the focus, and you have the governance and the team to make this happen. The second important thing is around AI readiness, and I think it's a very, very important aspect. Just recently, we were involved with an NGO which basically focuses on improving the life of children across the globe. And while their mandate from a business was very clear across the organization, what we found out that the kind of inferences that they need for their marketing as well as the finance team, the data was not supporting that. It didn't have the kind of quality that was required to make those forecasting. At the same time, it didn't have the depth so that you could make decisions ahead of time. As soon as you look at AI readiness, again, it's a score sheet that you look at, including different parameters like the technology that you use, the people that you have, the kind of processes that you follow, the culture that you have, the data you have, and based on that, you got to do a very accurate assessment of what your score is around readiness. And once you do that, you go across and set the right priorities for your, for the execution around that. Outside in, inside out, I think the landscape keeps on changing, the business requirement keeps on changing. From an inside-out perspective, look at the challenges that you have inside and try to put down what is it that is going to have better business impact from an AI perspective. And at the same time, you basically can look at an outside view as to what your competitors are doing. And in case if you have a leadership position, you can look at adjacent areas. So for example, OTT, which basically became prevalent in the last 10, 15 years, they leverage a lot of insights from the media and entertainment industry, so to speak. And you could basically have that inside-out approach. And beyond that is effectively a structured execution that you basically take it up. Again, I think drivers are very well known. We spoke about customer experience. We are looking at AI-first approach. One of the important aspects that I will point out is on the operating model. I think gone are the days where you do a service-based approach or a product-based approach. Just last week when I was using WhatsApp, I figured out that if someone sends me basically a QR code or someone sends me for payment, WhatsApp enables me to make a direct payment. Now, that's a change in operating model because a social media company is getting into the fintech space, and there are enough opportunities for each and everyone to make that happen. There are a multitude of use cases that we have been involved with. In the interest of time, I'll not get into that, but it includes the entire functional landscape of using different functions using the AI. At the same time, the complete thing right from conceptualization to operationalization of AI. If I have to leave you with one thought, if you have to build an AI-first approach, again, it starts with basically understanding your current landscape. It involves you to basically prioritize your business needs and leverage AI as a technology to ensure that you have retransformed business processes. You basically, invest in the API economy so that, whatever investment you have done on the platform can be accessed all across, and give insights in terms of what the businesses need and what the monitoring we do. And at the end, you finally get what you want in terms of reimagined customer experience, in terms of the business fluidity that you need, or any of the transform business model that you want to do. So with that, I will sum up my discussion. Thanks everyone for attending this session. I'll be available at the Happiest Minds booth or outside in the speaker lounge if anyone wants to pursue the discussion further. Thanks a lot, much appreciated.